Thank you, Salman. Uh, First time in Abu Dhabi, so thank you, Abu Dhabi, for hosting me. It's a great visit. Uh, so how did I get here, and why am I talking about blockchain? So I did most of my career in cybersecurity for the last 20-something years. A couple of years ago, I was the general manager of Cisco's Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. Um, and I heard about blockchain in 2014, wrote my first article about then. And last year I spent in Brazil as a strategic advisor for Banco Safra on cybersecurity. And pretty much as I was consulting the board of directors, the CTO, the CIO. First management committee that I was in, they brought in the topic of blockchain. They were looking, and exploring what they can do with blockchain, and I assumed on myself the role of advising them on blockchain, while I was merely 6 to 12 months ahead of them. Okay, so experimented with that, and I thought that it would be a good idea to try and kind of recap the approach when you want to build a distributed ledger network or technology or application. So I'm going to start with your permission, and I would actually ask for your forgiveness before I start. It's the first time I run this presentation. I'm not fluent, and I'll have to look at the slides, so my apologies. So how do we agree on an asset balance nowadays? Okay, a traditional ledger, if we're a commercial organization, we will look at what do we have in stock, income, expenses, etc. That's a ledger. Okay. In the digital world, there are many copies. They may contain different version of the truth. The challenge is which one of them is real. Okay, that's a traditional one. Now, introducing you the internet, where we don't know what is true. Okay, anyone can be written. Anyone can publish their version, and we need to figure out which is the true version. Okay. So distributed ledger in action. Okay. Although I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar, but if we're trying to get, if we're trying to write down, the series of transactions, and we're doing that intuitively, then we will all shout out a number, and someone has to record that. Okay, and this is why we're looking at mechanism that can, when we go on a larger scale, on a mechanism that will accept what is the transaction and what is the order for that to be written, and then submit that. That's basically where we're going to with blockchain or DLT in general. So when is blockchain relevant? It's relevant when you're looking for high level of trust, integrity, and security. By the way, someone asked before a question about security and blockchain hacking. I'd be happy to answer that later. How much would we store on the blockchain? Okay, are we going to store the entire information? I was talking to a medical startup, and they're looking to write medical record on the blockchain. So are you going to write my entire medical history on the blockchain? How big the blockchain is going to be? How big the block is going to be? Okay? Are you just going to write an index to an external repository? Then are we breaking security here? Or are we breaking the fundamental concept of blockchain? How large is the network? Okay, so if you're running a private network and it's small, okay, but what if you're running the entire nation medical records? how big the network, who is the participant, okay? Uh, and so on. So key considerations when you are looking at a blockchain product or project. I'm actually, just as a caveat, I should have said it before, I would be less focused on public blockchain. Some of you guys would participate in the public blockchain. There are startups here doing ICOs. I'm aiming more to the permissioned or semi-permissioned private DLTs in my talk. So key considerations when your organization wants to do a DLT. The right business case. The right business case needs to support, or the technology needs to support a business case, okay? So give you an example, okay, of a business case we thought of in a financial institute, which is a classic for smart contract, which I'll discuss later, and that's guarantees, okay? So imagine you're a construction, you work in construction, you have a company, every project you go in, you need to give guarantees, okay? That's the way that market works. So if you're going to build an house, you give a guarantee to whoever you're performing for. Now, if you run multiple of that, okay, you need to release the guarantees on certain times, you know, or milestones, because you need the guarantees for other work. Nowadays, you go to the bank, you get a piece of paper, okay? So if you broke your guarantee, it's really hard for whoever you broke the guarantee to go collect the money, and he needs to go through to get legal remedies. And on the other end, the constructor is always tight on money because he needs the money to go and do the next project. So we came up with that scenario of guarantees and automated that with a smart contract. It's a very good test case, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because if the work has been done, and the smart contract releases the money, okay? And everyone is happy because they don't need to go through court, okay? It has some reliance on an external entity, you know, to approve that the work was done, okay? And if that approval, but that approval is usually given by a third party. If that approval is not given, then of course the smart contract is not working. By the way, there's nothing smart about smart contracts, okay? It's a coded contract, but it's nothing smart. It's a simple if and then, okay? So the right use case would have to be one without a middleman, okay? Would have to build on among large number of people with trust among them. And we would have to support distributed consensus of transparency. That's a good use case. So one thing you want to think about is non-functional requirements, such as data privacy, transaction throughput. You know, if you look at Bitcoin, the transaction throughput of Bitcoin is only 20% of the throughput of the Visa network, okay? So again, depends what you want to build. Not everything is suitable, okay? And sometimes you need to find a way, you know, or to find that distributed ledger technology that supports your use case. As the colleague that that was before, Henry, I believe, said that 10 of them at least, okay? And high speed of performance, etc. So enterprise integration requirements, I think that's probably the biggest pain point, okay? When you're talking about a public DLT, then it lives in its own eco, okay? There's no integration to outside parties, but you cannot deploy DLT in your organization without integrating that to the back end, okay, and to other business processes. And that's one of the places where security would come crucial, okay? So when looking at integration requirement, you would look at assets like enterprise middleware stack, identity management platform, corporate security system, application data silos, BPM, etc. And again, as Henry said earlier, interoperability is still in its infancy, despite what vendors might claim. Okay, we're really, really early stages. You know, I started with information security way before it became cyber, at 1996. Okay, this is pretty much the same place blockchain is right now. Okay. So I remember when we came to a customer at 1997, we had one solution that fits everyone. Everyone would get a router with access list, a firewall, and an antivirus. It doesn't matter if you're 20 people or 2,000 company, 2,000 people company. That was it. That was the deal, and that was the deal for quite a long time. Now, when you look at cybersecurity, there's like 20 disciplines, everyone specializing in a bit. And this is where blockchain is today, okay? Everyone says blockchain, everyone says DLT, different solutions, different needs, you know, permission or not permission. We are still at those times, so we're lucky to be there at the beginning, actually. And that's true for smart contracts as well, and there are at least 3 or 4 mechanism for smart contract. I like to call that smart contracts coding, because really they're very controversial. You know, a smart contract to what jurisdiction? Okay, and if I impose smart contract with a vendor, then is it legally binding? So let's say smart contract coding and agree that that's a conditional application that can act, but not to hang out too much on the smart contract or the legally binding. Security and data privacy, especially when you look within the organization. So Bitcoin has great anonymity, okay? But how much privacy does it provide? Okay, because I can see, I say it's most of the networks are pseudo-anonymous nowadays. 8 years ago, maybe they were more anonymous. Nowadays, I don't think there's one exchange, or at least not the big ones, that you can buy a token without going to KYC. If you went through KYC and on the way out, if you want to take money, you go through AML, there's no anonymity anymore, okay? Because I can track on the ledger every transaction you did, okay? Now, this is an allegory because at the end of the day, you would be deploying this technology in-house. So you need to think, what are the records and who is viewing them, and what kind of privacy you're providing to the organization or to the person you're holding or transferring his record. So that was few considerations that I came across, you know, when we tried to plan on actually building an internal application based on DLT. Let's talk about consensus a bit, because there are different mechanisms for consensus. Some of them would give you a faster consensus, but won't give you a finality. Some would give you that. So again, when you're looking at solutions, look at those points and say, what is more important to me in this application? And remember, those are different scales than building Bitcoin or Ethereum, okay? You're working at much smaller scales. So what makes a good consensus? To start with decentralized governance. If we are looking at a single person giving consensus or a single server, then you don't need blockchain. Then the use case you're using doesn't need blockchain. Look at the other technologies, maybe cloud computing, okay? Integrity. You want the consensus to enforce the validation of the transaction integrity. Non-repudiation, okay. Naturally, privacy, fault tolerance. So we want to make sure that if one of the nodes doesn't operate or doesn't operate efficiently, it still operates very well. And of course, performance always. But we still need to agree on a common version, Bayesian or lottery or proof of work or proof of stake, etc. So I actually found that yesterday and I copied that in because I thought it's interesting. It's interesting to look through. I didn't write that, but it's a nice white paper. Happy to forward to whoever. I'm sorry I didn't credit it. So I'm looking at consensus, or we're looking at consensus algorithm of three organizations. Ethereum, which we are all familiar with. Hyperledger, which is the Linux Foundation. And one of the speakers mentioned that earlier. I think they have about 170 members by now. Very large organization. We have the R3, which is the banking consortium. I think they have about 70 banks right now. Those are different, I would say, smart contracts application or infrastructure. On the description, Ethereum is very generic. We've seen a lot of implementation. I think most of the startups going on ICOs are using Ethereum, okay? We've got the Hyperledger Fabric. They've got few more of them. It's a modular blockchain platform, and it has the DApp, the application layer, and R3, which are really Corda, which are really for the financial institute. You need to be a member to use that, but the fees are not. If you're a financial institute, you can probably pay that. Looked at their fees. So the governance, for those, it's in the Ethereum, it's Vitalik, of course, and the Ethereum developers community. Hyperledger is Linux, and the Corda is R3. Mode of operation, Ethereum is completely permissionless. You cannot run permission. If you need to run permissions, then Ethereum is not the right one, the right infrastructure for you. Hyperledger and Corda are both permissions and are both private. So that's going to be a private network. The consensus in Ethereum is done by mining, the proof of work, and it's a ledger level, it's a block level, okay? They approve a block. In Hyperledger and in Corda, it's very specific, and they can, the consensus actually approves a transaction. When you look at Corda, because it's for financial institute, you can't do that any other way. You need to verify each and every transaction. In terms of the language, the coding language, Ethereum uses Solidity, and R3 and Corda uses mainly Java. Yep. So once we got into the consensus, we verified it, and we write it to the block. The less trust required, the lower maintenance costs. That's kind of the obvious. So this was just reminding people, this was said today many times. I would say that blockchain does not equal Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an application, the first application running on top of blockchain, but naturally you can run many, many other applications. The only thing that I'm sorry is when I wrote an article in 2014 about Bitcoin, I wrote in the on that article that cryptocurrency is going to replace fiat. That was in 2014. I said, I don't know how long it will take. And I'm not sure Bitcoin would be the one, but I'm pretty sure Bitcoin is going to lead the way. I still don't think Bitcoin is going to be the one. I think that it has way too many problems, okay? I'm just sorry that I didn't bought shitload of Bitcoin that day and listen to myself, you know? So we spoke about smart contracts. Another example for smart contract, or we out of time? We're out of time. So thank you very much for being patient with me. And thank you for hosting me. If anyone has a question, I'm happy to take a quick one, or we are out of time completely.
We can take a question.
Hello, how secure is the blockchain?
Security of blockchain? Security of blockchain is phenomenal. The problem is not with the security of the blockchain, it's with the interfaces. And that's a question that was asked before and I wanted to answer. Blockchain was not yet hacked, okay? What happened is they changed the UI or the website and changed the address of the wallet. So people were depositing in the wrong wallet. It has nothing to do with the blockchain, okay? And as Henry said before, I believe that every organization that deploys blockchain should run it through the same security requirements as any other project because of the interfaces, and should run it under the same security testing as it runs everything else. But to date, and I've looked into that, I haven't seen any breach on the actual chain, okay? And that's to your question. Interfaces are problematic. Thank you so much.